It's Friday, which means it's time for another exciting episode of Ask Us Anything. Bahir and Uma with you. We've got a whole bunch of questions about the Oscars, obviously. Our first one is from @Kailash Laxman, who asks, so a little event called the Oscars happened a few days ago. Who or which movie do you think got snubbed the most, and which do you think was the most deserved? I don't know if it was a snub, but I think it was a surprise. All of the momentum heading into The Brutalist was lost, and Sean Baker took all of the awards, all of the major awards. He was also the first and only person to have won 4 Academy Awards for the same movie in the same year. So I think Walt Disney had done something similar, but it was for different movies. @Suan asks, did Anora deserve Best Picture? I don't know about deserving or not, but I have a theory, Bahir, as to why Anora won in the end and why the momentum from The Brutalist was lost.
Okay.
So, I know there was a lot in Sean Baker's speech about indie filmmaking and how Anora only cost $6 million, etc., etc. But The Brutalist was also a very indie film. It also didn't cost a lot of money, and Brady Corbet had a hell of a time selling it to studios. So both of those movies are cut from the same cloth. However, my theory goes back to what you've been saying over the last few weeks with regards to how the Academy is just made up of a bunch of Americans who are voting for shit. It is just regular people voting for shit, and they are influenced by everything that happens around them.
Yeah.
I think the reason the momentum was lost from The Brutalist, because going into award season, it was doing really well. And then, after the Trump victory, things started to change. And I think it's because Anora tells the story of an all-American girl standing up to a bunch of Russian oligarchs. I think that theme is playing on every American's mind at the moment, especially liberal Hollywood types. And so maybe the story in the movie had a bigger impact post-Trump.
I would go something even simpler. And this has been proven time and time again during every Oscar season, is that people will come out and say, oh, I only voted for the 3 movies because that's only the 3 I saw. Brutalist is an almost 4-hour thing.
3 hours and 45 minutes, yeah.
So I think people just couldn't get around to it. For me, my biggest surprise was a complete unknown, actually. I would have thought that would have done more. I think being, Bob Dylan, an American icon, I thought that would have gone further.
The Oscars also have this thing where they have trouble recognizing young male actors because they don't think they've put in the time, and the awards often go to the older male actors. And in contrast to that, they love themselves in young ingenue, and they love giving it to the young female actresses as opposed to the older actresses, in this case Demi Moore. But of course, Emma Stone has won twice, Jennifer Lawrence has won twice, and oftentimes over arguably more deserving older actresses. And then on occasion, they will give it to a Michelle Yeoh or a Jamie Lee Curtis, almost like a Lifetime Achievement Award.
That is quite interesting that you say that. I've never seen it that way.
But with the Timothée Chalamets of the world, it's like, oh, you're just young. You've got time. You need to earn your stripes, buddy. So we got to give it to the older guy. I mean, they gave it to Adrian Brody, and I haven't seen The Brutalist yet. You haven't either. I just need to bring myself to that mental space where I can watch a 3-hour and 45-minute movie. Also, I need to find the time because I have a 10-month-old.
Yeah.
And 3 hours and 45 minutes is a lot of committed time where he's not awake. So I need to watch that. But after Brody won, I texted you because I was looking up his filmography. And he won for The Pianist. He won for The Brutalist. He's done a bunch of Wes Anderson movies. And almost everything else he has done in his career, and there are a lot of movies, everything else is garbage. Everything else is crap. Like, he has not had a career to speak of, with the exception of some Wes Anderson movies and these two Oscar-winning movies. So either his agent is terrible or he makes some really bad choices.
Which I was surprised. I've always held up Adrian Brody as this, I don't know why, it's like this Daniel Day-Lewis
Right?
type guy, actor. I like the actor's actor. And then I looked up his
It's
filmography.
because of
I'm
The
like,
Pianist. I'm telling you, it's because of that one movie.
it's because of that one movie.
He was
Yeah.
so good
And you
in
know
that,
what it is?
though.
It's that one movie that catapulted him into my zeitgeist.
Yes.
So for me, it's like, oh, if that's what he's done, that must be all he does. The Wes Anderson stuff is just for funsies. But no, doesn't do good stuff.
No. Also, just to add to my Honora theory, I think, and I haven't seen it, but I know there have been some conversations about certain Zionist themes in The Brutalist.
Oh.
And I've seen that come out of certain publications in the Middle East. And I think maybe that played a part as well.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh, maybe.
With liberal Hollywood. So it's the Russian thing, it's the Zionist stuff, and maybe all of that had an influence. I don't know. But to answer Kailash's question, I don't think there were any major surprises. I didn't expect Wicked to take any of the major awards. I think it was there as a consolation. But the biggest surprise for me was Honora. Like, I really thought, like I said in our predictions podcast, Honora would take screenplay. There was a chance it may win Best Movie, and Mikey Madison may take Best Actress, but I really thought the Academy was going to go, hey, it's Demi Moore's time.
Yeah.
Because when you think about it, it feels a little bit like her last chance, unless someone else gives her a super meaty role.
I feel like that was the problem. The substance doesn't feel like an Oscar movie.
You're right.
And it's not the topic of conversation. It's just the way the movie looks, the way it runs, the way it feels. It's so punk aesthetic that I don't think...
The old-time Oscar voters would go for it, right?
God, I hope they watched it. But whether or not they saw it as anything more than just, oh, these kids having fun lah with this pop punk aesthetic.
But also, I think part of it has to do with the fact that Mikey Madison is in almost every scene in Honora, if not every scene. And Margaret Qualley is in most of the substance as opposed to Demi Moore.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's not like supporting actress where you can nominate Isabella Rossellini, who's barely in Conclave. Although very impactful, but you know what I mean.
My final thought is this. Just remember, the Oscars are not voted on by members of the public. They are voted on by members of the Academy.
I would recommend you look up the Brutally Honest Oscar ballot on the Hollywood Reporter, which comes out every year. And you can read all the previous ones as well to get you an idea of the mindset of voters. It's anonymous voters who talk about who they've put on their ballot. And it's really interesting insight because, yet again, these aren't critics that are voting for these movies. Sometimes they'll just be like, oh, I've met this person and that person seems like a really nice guy, so I'm going to vote for him over this other person. And I'm just like, what? Really?
That's the other thing, right? People don't realize that that's whose vote is people who are working in the industry. It's like asking the kitchen chef at your favorite little cafe to also vote for the world's Michelin restaurants.
Exactly.
I think only the technical awards are decided upon by members of their guild.
Correct.
I think that's the thing to remember. That Hollywood Reporter article that you mentioned, Uma, it will blow your mind reading it because you're just like, hey, these guys are just like me. They don't know anything about anything.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. That was it. That's my last thought.
Same.
At Daphne M88 asks, intimacy coordinators. These roles weren't a thing in the past. What is the actual role of the intimacy coordinator? And are they only for the main actors? What is your take on them? Should there be one for every intimate scene? With Mickey Madison saying there was no need for an intimacy coordinator on Honora, does it put more pressure on actors in the future?
Intimacy coordinators are a very new thing. They are a product of the Me Too era. However, they do more than just watch out for wrongdoing. So actually, the intimacy coordinator role is a lot more complex. They actually even work towards making a scene feel more real, for example. And so they're not just there to make sure someone isn't harassing someone else or putting their hands where they're not supposed to put their hands, etc., etc.
They're not the sex police.
They aren't the sex police, correct?
Yeah. They are intimacy coordinators.
So they have a creative role as well. I know there was a lot of noise when Mikey Madison talked about not having an intimacy coordinator in Nora, and everyone was kind of freaking out. I genuinely think it really is up to the adults in the room. If both the actors, the director, the producers, if they're happy with the situation and everything seems consensual, you do you. I think the way everyone was talking about it with regards to Mikey Madison's comments made it feel like they were the sex police. So I'm all for intimacy coordinators because a lot of the time sex in movies looks awful. And so if someone is there who is smart and knows how it works and can make things more steamy and erotic and thrilling, then by all means, because God knows directors, producers, and writers aren't the best people to do that. I don't think Mikey Madison's comments has a big effect because I think it really is up to the studios, and a lot of studios want to cover their ass as well. So they have these people there so they can say, oh wait, there were intimacy coordinators, because a lot of the time they're just worried about the backlash, right?
I looked up Mickey Madison's original comment. She was talking to Pamela Anderson.
On actors, right?
Yeah. And I think a lot of people's problems with it was that she was offered the intimacy coordinator by the director and producer. So a lot of people were saying that maybe she felt pressured into not saying yes. Maybe she didn't want to waste the production's budget on it. I've been a producer and I get it. Like if I'm getting a fucking stuntman to jump off a building, I want him to be properly protected. I'm not going to listen to him lah. But then again, if a senior stunt coordinator is saying that, oh, he doesn't need to wear a bulletproof vest because we're not firing guns at him, then I'm like, okay lah, I'll take your word for it. The problem here is we cannot assume that the director and producer was pressuring the actor, or if the actor felt any pressure to say yes or no. As a person who's been in a production, I feel like when an offer like this is made, invariably it's made for comfort as opposed to for saving money. Yes, it's a smaller budget than, I don't know, whatever, anything else that was nominated for Best Picture that year. But $6 million is still $6 million. If they needed to, I'm sure they could have spent $100,000 on an intimacy coordinator. It just means a smaller catering budget or whatever. I will say one of the articles I did read made a good point in that the intimacy coordinator is not necessarily just for Mickey Madison and the guy she was dealing with, right? It's not just to deal necessarily with those sex scenes. An intimacy coordinator could have been or should have probably been around for those earlier scenes in the movie where a lot of it takes place in the strip club, where a lot of women were in various states of undress. And there was even a couple of shots where they were walking through a hallway and women were giving men lap dances, right? So yes, they're unnamed women, they're extras on both sides of that exchange. The question is, if someone was to act inappropriately, who would that unnamed extra go to?
Yeah.
Would they go to a producer? Would they go to a director? Will they feel protected? Will they feel safe enough to go to that? So in those situations, an intimacy coordinator could be helpful.
Yeah.
And again, but I think part of the problem is that it's new, right? A lot of people were not thinking of an intimacy coordinator for those scenes. They were thinking about the close-up sexual moments between the two lead actors in the film, but not thinking about that earlier sequence.
Yeah.
Maybe. I think you can't take out Mickey Madison for this. You sure as hell can't take out Sean Baker and his producing partner on this. I think it's just something we have to roll with. I think Hollywood has to figure this out as they go along and not just blame people for not having one on set, because that's the problem with the union stuff from the early 80s, the early 70s, and the early 60s on Hollywood, right? Union says you need to have 12 light guys, but I only need 4. Nope. Union rule says you need to have 12, so you have 12 and you just waste money.
This is why over the years, Hollywood productions have got some of the most bloated costs in the world, which is why a movie like Flow can be made for so little money, which is why Anora can be made for so little money, because indie productions aren't bound by the same regulations as the massive studio productions. And don't get us wrong, those union regulations are there to protect union workers as well. However, sometimes there is no middle ground, and therein lies the problem. But yet again, there's a lot of stuff that happens on a film set, in a production, and it's a very high pressure environment because things need to happen quickly. Budgets are insane and have to be conformed to. And some of these things you only end up thinking about in hindsight. And so it's easy to get caught up in all of the internet criticism and negativity and noise. I don't blame either of them. And I think the adults in the room made a decision, and you need to respect that decision. So, yeah. But an intimacy coordinator is something that is going to be a very prominent part of productions moving forward. So we'll just have to see how that plays out. At Joanne Lim 89 asks, does heavy spending on award campaigns undermine the merit of the winners? And where is the line between legitimate award campaigning and simply buying a win? Heavy spending on award campaigns include a lot of things. So with Anora, for example, the head of Neon on a podcast, I think it's the Town podcast, spoke about how they spent $18 million on Anora's awards campaign because they believed in the movie. Now, the movie only cost $6 million. However, a big win like what Anora just did means a lot more for Neon than the $18 million that they spent. All of these studios, however, have to outline what they spent their money on because the Academy has very strict rules and they can ban movies, blacklist movies, studios, etc. for breaking those rules. Anora spent on billboards. It's the kind of spending that creates awareness, right? Billboards, adverts, full pages in magazines like Variety and The Hollywood Reporter, industry stuff. They're trying to put the movie in front of voters' eyes. Because a lot of the time, like Bahir said before, people haven't seen these movies because they haven't seen them in cinemas. What Neon also did was spend a lot of money sending physical DVDs and screeners out to people. This was something that Harvey Weinstein did all the way back in the Miramax Shakespeare in Love days to make sure that people can watch these movies. Some people just send out digital screeners. However, DVDs have a bigger impact, right? You've got cover art. A lot of the Academy voters are also very old. I think it was Christopher Walken in his interviews for Severance who talks about how he doesn't have a smartphone. He doesn't know how any of these things work. And I'm sure if Walken is voting for something, he wants to be able to put a disc into a machine as opposed to clicking through multiple links and then having to verify two-factor on your phone before you can watch a movie, right? So the DVD method is actually a really powerful way to get the movie in front of people. And in America, all of this stuff costs a lot of money. You got to print those boxes, you got to send it out, you got to manufacture DVDs, all of that stuff. And of course, a billboard, down Rodeo Drive is also going to cost a lot of money. And so that kind of campaign feels legitimate. From what I understand, though, I think Weinstein also had some goodie bags that he used to send people. Like that, for me, feels like straight up bribery lah.
Yeah, and I think the Academy doesn't allow for that anymore.
No, they don't.
Yeah, I think they don't allow you to buy iPhones or like holiday packages to Maui and
watch
stuff
Shakespeare
anymore.
in Love on the brand new iPhone.
Yeah. Or, hey, why don't you get on a plane and go to Maui and watch Shakespeare in Love in a hotel?
Exactly.
That I've paid for you already. Yeah. I think stuff like that they can't do. And I don't know if it undermines the merit of a win. I think it more, like you said, I think in recent times, the Academy has made it a lot stricter as to what you can spend that money on. So again, yes, it is awareness. It is ensuring people watch your movie. It's ensuring people remember your film is the other thing, right? Because the nominating period is towards the end of the year. So if your movies come out earlier in the year, people would have forgotten. Like you and I forget movies we've seen.
But also, there's a reason why it's a problem that Dune Part 2 came out in February or March, right? Because it's so far gone in people's memories. And unless they rewatch the movie and are reinvigorated by the movie, they're not necessarily going to remember it come filling in your ballots. And so that's why we always talk about how awards movies and Oscar movies get released between like September and December.
The Dune thing is a perfect example because there was I think it must have come out from the Hollywood Reporter thing, that an Academy Award voter said, "Oh, I didn't see Dune 2 because I didn't like Dune 1 and I didn't want to spend 2 hours on the movie." You go like, "Oh, that's fair." But also you're an Academy voter. Is it fair? So the question of spending during campaign season I think is fine. I think it's the way of the world now, and you just kind of have to go with it.
Yeah, for me, I'm okay with it as long as you're not bribing people or buying votes. However, I have to say, it's a problem when people don't see really good movies. So, for example, Ray Fiennes doesn't play the game. He never has. He just doesn't care. And because he doesn't play the game, and when I say play the game, I mean he did a junket for Conclave, sure. But once you get nominated, all of these actors go on a media blitz and they're everywhere. And Ray Fiennes doesn't do that. And actually, that has been detrimental because he's been nominated 3 times. And because he's not getting his face out there and doing the spiel and selling the movie and selling his performance, he's not on the front of everyone's minds when they come to filling out their ballots. And so that actually really does affect how people vote. In the same way, even on a completely pedestrian level, I remember Everything Everywhere All at Once, and I was really excited by Michelle Yeoh's performance because I think that's the best acting performance she's given in her career. But I had never seen Tar. And so in the front of my mind, as I was looking at those 5 nominees, I was like, yeah, it's got to be Michelle Yeoh. She's amazing. Because I'd seen the other movies, and I'm like, oh, they were good. But Michelle Yeoh was like standout performance of her career. And then months later, when I finally saw Tar, I was like, holy shit. Like, Cate Blanchett is amazing and just hit it out of the park. And I was like, oh, I think Cate was robbed in that year. But if you expound that to Academy voters and all of the movies they haven't seen but have to vote for, you understand why things play out the way that they do.
Ed Sid Takwidin asks, not sure if you'll discuss leaks, but what are your thoughts on the recent Avengers Doomsday concept art leaks? I've been really underwhelmed with the MCU post-Endgame, but those leaks got me excited again for the franchise since it's something really different. Though I'm still not convinced RDJ is the right man for Doom. We don't really discuss leaks here. I haven't seen the concept art leaks, but also concept art is very early on.
You know all of those art of books? Which they release after a movie, like Art of the Guardians of the Galaxy, Art of the Multiverse of Madness, etc., etc. They're massive books because they contain a shit ton of concept art that never makes it into the film. So at this stage of a production, they're just shooting ideas out. But every thought that the directors and producers have, they have a group of artists who they ask to storyboard it. They're like, what would this look like? What would that look like? All kinds of crazy things. And they put it all down in art. And then they work from there. Don't forget that also the movie might be in script draft number 7 now. And they've got concept art from script draft number 1 all the way through final script, right? And the changes that happen, especially in a movie like this, especially in a Marvel movie where they're changing up villains and ideas and how they're going to tie it into the next one, etc., etc. Nothing you see in these leaks is likely to happen at this stage.
Again, I don't know what that leak is, right? If it's a leak of a combined new group of Avengers, I will say there's a chance that 1 or 2 of those guys may still be there in the final movie. You know what I mean? Like, this is not set in stone. Literally, it's called concept art for a reason because it's just art of a concept. If you saw the first concept art for C-3PO, you would hate it. I hate it so bad. It is terrible.
And we're glad that you're excited.
Yeah.
Because, sure, some of that might come to fruition. But yeah, we haven't seen the leaks, so we're not sure what it might be. But we also make it a point never to share these leaks on Goggler, just because we think it's really lame, and we don't like spoiling things for people.
Yeah.
At Travesty asks, I have a question since you guys watched all 9 episodes of Daredevil Born Again. If I start a drinking game where I take a shot every time Wilson Fisk says, "the city," will I get alcohol poisoning by the end of episode 9? Travesty, you will get alcohol poisoning by the end of episode 5, I think.
Really?
He says the city a lot.
No, I know he does, but it's a weekly show, dude.
Oh, I just meant if you binged it lah.
Oh, if you binge it, yeah lah, that one you die lah.
You die. Straight die.
Travesty, I think if you watch it week on week and take a shot every time Wilson Fisk says the city, you'll be drunk after 45 minutes, but I think you'll be okay.
However, if you binged it and then you binge drunk as well, you will die. Not just alcohol poisoning and go blind, you will die.
At Rabbit Hop asks, the Michael Jackson biopic by Antoine Fuqua is coming out later this year. Are you excited about it, considering Michael Jackson is one of the most recognizable figures of all time? I am excited because of who the director is.
Same. However, I think it's one of the hardest biopics to make ever, just because of everything about Michael Jackson.
Here's the question. I remember reading about this, and I think it's only a specific point in the life, right? It's not like a cradle to grave kind of situation, right?
You have to only do that because you
have
can't.
to pick a moment. Yeah.
I think HBO have a follow-up, dude, to the Neverland documentary that's coming out soon.
Shit.
Yeah, there's a follow-up to that where they go back to the people who made the accusations. And so Michael Jackson's a really complex character, and I think the world is still trying to deal with how to talk about him and his legacy. Even if you look at the Quincy Jones tribute at the Oscars, I know they went with The Wiz and they were playing those songs, but Quincy Jones had an incredible impact on Michael Jackson and made some of his greatest music, produced some of his greatest stuff. And yet there was no mention of Michael Jackson at the Oscars, and they probably just didn't want to court Twitter, TikTok controversy.
Yeah.
And so I think the biopic is going to be really controversial. I don't know where I stand about Michael Jackson with regards to what happened, because all of that information is so cloudy. However, he was a genius musician and I love his music. I think every time one of those songs plays on radio, I'm just like, Jesus, this thing is so well crafted. Like, it's insane, some of the songs he made and how he made them. Yeah, I'm in awe of that. And I don't think anyone has come close to that kind of music in pop. So yeah, it's going to be a really cool biopic, I'm sure, because Antoine Fuqua is really good. However, man, you know the op-eds that are going to come out after that biopic lah.
And I feel like that would be unfair to the legacy of the man and what I assume the movie will be, right? Because it's what we spoke about. You have to be able to separate the man from the art. I don't think you have to. I think you do what you need to do to get through your day. I love Michael Jackson's early music, and I will keep listening to it when I want to. What may or may not have happened, what he may or may not have done, I think is secondary lah. I think that's not. I'm not putting the man on the pedestal. I'm putting his music on the pedestal.
Yes.
It's the same with me with sportsmen and athletes and all that. Like, yeah, I love watching the NFL, but the NFL also has a lot of issues with their athletes and sexual violence and just violence at home with their wives, and fuck, some guy ran a dog fighting ring and all that. And like, that's unfortunate, but I still love the sport.
Yeah.
I think that's okay. For me, I'm happy with that because I'm here for that sport. I don't care about the man. Just in the same way, if they were to die in an accident, I'd be like, oh, that's a shame. I won't see him do his sport thing anymore.
At Ellen Tan SL asks, you guys have been raving about Paradise. What do you think about episode 7? That End of the World episode is to me one of the greatest TV episodes in recent years. On a similar note, what are your picks for the most memorable TV episodes that you have seen?
Oh.
First of all, I agree that episode 7 of Paradise was beautifully crafted.
Yes.
Just on a tension level, on an emotional level. And I say beautifully crafted because you know what happened already. And so for them to flash back and still make it tense and important and have you at the edge of your seat, even though by the point you reach episode 7, you know exactly how it plays out, is some pretty good writing. I love that episode so much. For those of you who haven't watched Paradise, go watch Paradise. It's a really good show. Anyway, do you have a list? I have something of a list of like favorite TV episodes, but none of them are particularly current.
Yeah. Didn't we have a list from last year?
I think we did. I'm not sure. I can't remember when was the last time we spoke about this. Like, the most recent favorite episode of TV is probably episode 3 of The Last of Us with Nick Offerman. And I think that really took me by surprise, and I was so invested in that episode. That episode was absolutely amazing. And so Recent-wise, I think that is some great television, but all of my real favorites go back to The West Wing and MASH. Like, my list of favorite episodes of The West Wing is super fucking long. Like, I can give you like a top 20.
At that point, you just go like, just watch the first 4 seasons.
I think so. I think you should. Because like Hartsfield's Landing, Two Cathedral, Shadow of Two Gunmen, like there are just so many episodes that are so good. The
goddamn pilot.
Even a random middle season episode like Post Hoc Ergo Propter Hoc, like they're all so good. But MASH, there's one episode of MASH that I always watch over and over again. Now MASH, if you don't know, it's a series that ran many, many years ago. It ran for 10 or 11 seasons. It still, to date, I think has the most watched finale of all time. It starred Al Nalda, and it was set during the Korean police action / Korean War. The show ran a lot longer than the actual Korean War. But there is an episode, and I can't remember what season it's in, but it's just called Hawkeye. Hawkeye was the name of Al Nalda's character. And this is an absolutely phenomenal episode. It's 24, 26 minutes, right? And Hawkeye has a Jeep accident and ends up being looked after by a North Korean family. But he knows as a doctor that his concussion is really bad and that he needs to stay up. This North Korean family don't understand a word he's saying. So for 24 minutes, it's Alan Alda just talking and monologuing and making jokes and trying to keep himself up. And it's literally this one-man show. It is so fucking good. Like, I watched that episode over and over again. It is so well written. And like, this family have no clue what he's talking about because he's just speaking English. And it's just a great 24 minutes of television. Like, that is one of my favorite TV shows of all time and also one of my favorite TV episodes of all time.
I have to complete MASH. I'm 100% sure I've not seen all the episodes.
Yeah.
Definitely not in the right order.
Right, yeah.
I really have to get to that. That's on my glaring list. We had a list. It's a fairly short list, disappointingly, from 2023.
Okay.
And I think I'll go back to that. The Bear Season 2, Episode 7.
Yes.
I believe that was the one where Rich joins the restaurant. Is it right?
Yes, I think so.
I mean, I think The Bear is... Recently, The Bear have got some of the best episodes out there. A lot of people pick out the Thanksgiving episode, but I won't say I don't like those. I like the ones that are current, that are separate from the main story. The one where Richie goes to the restaurant and becomes the...
Maitre d'.
Learns to become the maitre d', right? He strives and steps up to it. I thought that was up there. Forks is the episode, right? I think Forks is what it was called. That was a great episode for me. I think that was right up there for me.
Older shows, yet again, the farewell episode in The Office, the Steve Carell's character is a standout. There are a lot of quieter episodes of Ted Lasso, which I really do like. There's an episode in the first season where Ted and Trent spend a day together. And it isn't a very loud episode. It isn't a gimmicky episode. It's just a great episode because I think that's where you realize who the character is. And you also realize who Trent Krim is. And I think it's just a very good character piece because you learn a lot about the people in the show. And it's just beautiful and heartwarming and touching and life-affirming. And it's all of the things Ted Lasso was and is. And so that episode for me really stands out as well.
And our last question of the day, Iman Bahari asks, maybe a silly one, but if you could ride or own any mode of transport from across all of pop culture and fandom, what would you have? Iman Bahari would personally like Ghost Rider's Hell Cycle or maybe a Mumakil. I have no idea what a Mumakil is.
Oh, a Mumakil is another name for the elephant in Lord of the Rings.
Oh, the elephants?
The elephants, yes. They're also called Mumakils.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah.
I only know them as the elephants.
There you go. I have a few.
I mean, you will be easy lah. I think I know your top choice lah.
Oh, what is it?
Back to the Future. The DeLorean.
Yeah,
that's
DeLorean,
so obvious.
baby.
Your number 2 will probably be the Ecto from Ghostbusters.
Correct.
Can I do 3 out of 3? Can I do 3 out of 3? Can I do 3 out of 3? Ooh, can I do a 3 out of 3?
Can you get 3 out of 3, my friend?
Can I get a hat trick? Ooh, this is a tough one. Shot in the dark. This is a shot from way outside the box. Knight Rider, Kit?
Yes!
Oh, Hat trick! Score!
That was what my wife guessed first. So she was like, oh, I bet it's Kit from Knight Rider. I'm like, yes, it is on my list. Top 3 though. But first would be DeLorean.
Yes, I think DeLorean is too obvious.
DeLorean, Ecto-1, and Kit.
Hat trick, motherfucker.
Nice one. Well done, Bahir. Well done.
Thank you. Only because I love it. I love the way it looks, not for any other reason. But the motorcycle from Great Escape.
Oh.
I just love that chopper look.
Was it an Indian motorcycle? No, right?
I think it was Indian. I think it might have been Indian. I don't think it was a Harley.
It's a great bike.
That's
a good one.
Yeah. Either Indian or Triumph. I think it was either Indian or Triumph. I can't remember. Either of the two. Yeah.
I would like Airwolf as well, but that's for different reasons, lah. I'd like to fly around and bomb people, but yes.
I think the Airwolf's a bit much, lah.
It's a bit much, lah.
I
I would also like people to call me Stringfellow Hawk because it's a fucking cool name. But anyway.
That's a great name, though.
It's a great name.
It also works as a first name, last name thing, right? Like
Yes.
the other way around works too. Hawk Stringfellow works great as well.
Yeah.
Like I've ridden horses before and they're fine. Like, would I want to ride
Seabiscuit.
Shadowfax? Sure. But like Shadowfax is just a horse. Sure, Shadowfax can go faster than most horses and he is the lord of all horses, but still a fucking horse. And I've done that before. I'm just like, it's fine. You know what I mean? Like Shadowfax is great. Like
Yeah.
he's a great, but like, meh. Maybe a great eagle.
Ooh, that would be cool.
Maybe riding a great eagle would be cool. Or have him hold me in his talon. That would be cool.
And fly around. Yeah.
And fly around. Yeah. Get him to take me to the next McDonald's. That'd be great.
There we go. That brings us to the end of another exciting episode of Ask Us Anything. Thank you so much for all of your questions. Keep them coming in. We're on Instagram on @GogglerMY. You can also email us on podcast@goggler.my or send us a WhatsApp on the Goggler hotline 012-524-5208. Thank you so much for listening. This is the Goggler Podcast.